If you're a Melbourne local, you've probably walked past St. Patrick's Cathedrals hundreds of times. But have you ever noticed a peculiar looking stone sculpture perched high up on the building? For years, people have wondered, is that Jeff Kennett? Gargoyles have been lurking on cathedrals for centuries. Their main practical function is water drainage, but over time they've taken on more meaning. Some believe the grotesque creatures represent evil and sin, keeping salvation within and leaving evil at the door. Others argue gargoyles are intended as protective magic against evil. Most take the shape of animals, monsters, and demons. However, some look like people. In the case of corbel heads, these stone sculptures were seen as a form of retaliation from the stonemasons about their low pay from the clergy. In the modern era, gargoyles are just as likely to honour someone as mock them. There's one in Cologne depicting the late Pope Francis. There's also one in France, where a stonemason carved one in his friend and colleague's likeness, Ahmed. For years, locals questioned whether this gargoyle's resemblance to Jeff Kennett was just a coincidence. Turns out, it wasn't. And in 2002, a decade after the gargoyle was created, stonemason Tom Carson came out and said that it was intentional. Carson said, "It's a classic big mouth Jeff Kennett face." Inspired by a history of stonemasons making fun of local dignitaries, Carson took a bit of liberty in creating the Jeff Kennett gargoyle. Because stonemasons are meant to copy the original work. But why Kennett? Well, Kennett was a member of the Liberal Party and the Premier of Victoria from 1992 to 1999. During his term, he was most notably remembered for his drastic cuts and privatisation of working class industries. Kennett closed over 300 public schools, with more than 7,000 teachers' jobs getting cut. 45,000 jobs were cut from the state's bureaucracy. $300 million was slashed from the healthcare budget, causing hospitals to close and limiting ambulance services. Kennett also introduced anti-union legislation and privatised essential services like electricity, water, and gas. Kennett introduced new employment contracts, which outlawed penalty rates, leave loading, and picket lines. Public transport was also targeted, with tram conductors being scrapped. Eventually, this pushed the Victorian public to retaliate. On November 10, 1992, over 100,000 workers took to these Melbourne streets to protest, led by the Victorian Trade Hall Council. Statewide, more than 800,000 Victorians went on strike in a show of unity and anger. This day was the biggest public protest in Melbourne since the moratorium to end the war in Vietnam on May 8, 1970. But despite the scale of this protest, the Kennett government persisted through to 1999. Although the 1992 protest did not achieve the outcome the unions wanted, this protest left a lasting legacy on Melbourne. That same year, the Kennett gargoyle was born. Perched on the side of the grand St. Patrick's Cathedral, a small, stony act of defiance by a working class craftsman. Like the stonemasons of the 12th century, Carson used his tools to capture a moment of history and poke fun at the powerful the only way he could. That's what's fascinating about this little piece of Melbourne history. It's not just an in-joke amongst the locals, but a centuries-old tradition carried on, and a powerful moment in working class history watching over Melbourne.